Picture this. You're walking into this ancient, dimly lit library. The room is completely silent, and the air is just heavy with that distinct scent of old paper, binding glue, and, centuries of dust. There are thousands of books all around you, but one specific manuscript just completely catches your eye. It doesn't have a normal title stamped on the spine. There's no author's name claiming it. So you open the heavy cover to the first page. And the writing, well, it looks organized. It's absolutely not just random scribbling. There are these repeated symbols flowing with real purpose. Some of them look almost like letters you might actually recognize, but others are just completely alien. You turn the page and the mystery just gets deeper. And then it hits you, the strangest part of this whole thing. Nobody alive knows what this book actually says. And that's not because the ink is faded away, but because the writing itself remains a total, unbreakable mystery. So in this explainer, we're going to dive right into it.
Right off the bat, you have to ask, who wrote it? Why was it written? Who was actually supposed to read this thing? And honestly, the most haunting question of all, what if a book was never meant to be read by us at all? This is the central mystery of the famous Voynich Manuscript. We're talking about an artifact filled with highly organized, beautifully patterned symbols that, despite over a century of intense scrutiny by literally the world's greatest code breakers and linguists, nobody has ever been able to decipher. We can look at its pages all we want, but we are completely deaf to its voice.
So this artifact gets its name from Wilfred Voynich, who is a Polish-American bookseller. He acquired it back in 1912. And today, we only have about 240 pages that actually survived. It definitely seems like the manuscript originally had even more pages before the ravages of time got to it. Now, these 240 surviving pages are absolutely packed with this unknown script. But here's the thing. The text is really only half the story. The manuscript is also completely filled with these bizarre hand-drawn illustrations that, well, they don't exactly clarify the text. If anything, they deepen the mystery incredibly.
Yeah, the illustrations are profoundly alien. First up, we have all these detailed drawings of plants, but these are absolutely not your typical botanical sketches. They don't neatly match up to any recognizable real-world species. Honestly, a lot of them look like composite plants, like they were Frankenstein together from totally different species. Then, you flip the page and there are these elaborate circular diagrams. They look astrological or astronomical, filled with stars and weird zodiac-like symbols. And most bizarrely, there are depictions of human figures, mostly women, and they're bathing or standing inside these strange vessels, surrounded by complicated pipe systems and flowing biological shapes. It's wild. And because the text is locked to us, we're left completely in the dark. I mean, are we looking at medieval medicine, some advanced cosmology, alchemy, or just pure imagination? We simply don't know.
All this visual chaos brings us right back to the core of the enigma, the writing itself. Because, like I said, the text isn't just gibberish. It has structure, it has patterns, and the words occur with the exact statistical frequency of a real spoken language. Researchers have basically narrowed it all down to 4 dominant theories. Step 1. It might be an unknown or lost natural language, like a lone surviving echo of a completely forgotten culture. Step 2. It could be a deliberate cipher, a secret code protecting valuable information. Step 3. It might be an entirely invented, constructed language. Or, step 4, and this one is fascinating, it could be an elaborate, incredibly detailed hoax designed purely to look meaningful.
That fourth theory, the hoax theory, is honestly one of the most cynically brilliant ideas. Just imagine it. Someone, centuries ago, decides they want to make an absolute fortune. So they create this massive manuscript, they draw exotic, impossible plants, they invent a wildly complex writing system out of thin air, and then they present it to some wealthy buyer, whispering, "Hey, this book contains forbidden secret knowledge." The buyer can't read it, obviously, but that exclusivity, that's exactly what makes it valuable. If this theory is true, the manuscript's greatest secret is that there is no secret at all. The mystery itself was the actual product being sold. It's a brilliant illusion, but it remains just one hypothesis among many.
Now, thinking about that hoax theory really highlights a vital psychological difference that we need to unpack. The profound difference between a secret and a mystery. Because they aren't the same thing. A mystery is simply an unknown answer that no one currently possesses. Like, say, what's at the absolute bottom of the deepest ocean? But a secret? A secret is information that is deliberately hidden by someone who actually knows the answer. If the Voynich Manuscript is a cipher, then it's a secret. The writing acts like a lock. And that creates a deeply disturbing, almost primal fear within us. The fear of what others might know that we don't. It implies there's a keeper of the knowledge, someone who specifically decided that you are not allowed to know.
So, why are we so fascinated by forbidden books? To really grasp this, we have to zoom out a bit and mentally put ourselves back in the medieval world. Back then, knowledge wasn't just a quick Google search away. Books were incredibly expensive. They were hand-copied over months, sometimes years, and literacy was incredibly rare. Books were literal symbols of wealth and absolute power, heavily guarded by monasteries, royal courts, and elite scholars. A mysterious manuscript wasn't just some object sitting on a dusty shelf, it was a potent weapon. Humanity has this long-standing, deep-rooted obsession with the idea that certain knowledge is dangerous, hidden, and ultimately transformational.
And the symbolic power of forbidden texts is so immense that, get this, the most famous one among them isn't even real. Think about the Necronomicon. It is a completely fictional forbidden book created by the horror writer H.P. Lovecraft. Yet Lovecraft wrote about it with such scholarly precision, he invented a fake author, a dark history, fake translations, and these terrifying, sanity-shattering contents. He did it so well that many people actively searched for it, totally believing it was a real historical artifact. The Necronomicon proves something super profound. The most influential books can exist entirely within other stories. Why? Because ideas are so much harder to control and way more infectious than physical objects ever could be.
The psychological pull of these forbidden texts always follows this very specific, predictable framework. Let's call it the anatomy of curiosity. First, something is hidden behind a boundary. Maybe it's a locked cover or a strange, unreadable language. Second, a warning is given. Do not read this. Third, and directly because of that very warning, human curiosity just grows like a weed. Finally, inevitably, the boundary is opened. And look, this isn't just about books. This is quite literally one of the oldest storytelling structures in human culture. It is Pandora's box. It is the forbidden fruit in the Garden of Eden. Tell a human being there is a boundary, and their absolute first instinct is to breach it.
Which brings us to the next part of our explainer, Section 2, the Library of Ghosts.
There is a real tragedy hidden within our love for old books. We've spent all this time talking about books we can't read, but what about the books we can no longer even hold? Throughout history, staggering, mind-boggling amounts of literature have simply vanished. An ancient writer produces an absolute masterpiece, it gets copied and quoted for centuries, until slowly, inevitably, the physical manuscripts crumble, they burn, or they're just lost, eventually leaving only these fleeting little traces in other writers' notes. The legendary Library of Alexandria stands as the ultimate symbol of this haunting reality. Whether it was destroyed in a single massive fire or it just decayed over centuries, the terrifying truth remains exactly the same. Civilizations can lose knowledge so much faster than they can recreate it. We mourn the philosophies and histories that vanished into dust, but honestly, the most chilling thought of all is this. Because we literally cannot make a list of books we never knew existed, humanity's greatest lost book is probably one we don't even know we're missing.
So, let's re-examine the core premise of this explainer. A book never meant to be read. What does that actually mean in practice? Well, it could mean the book was deliberately hidden from the public by elites who wanted to hoard the knowledge. It could mean it was locked behind a complex secret code. But it could also mean the book was intended for a very specific audience that simply no longer exists today. Or perhaps its meaning is entirely lost to the vast, uncaring passage of time. The symbols managed to survive the centuries, but the cultural context required to actually understand them has completely evaporated.
And that leads us to a pretty profound philosophical truth about literature itself. There's the saying, the book remains the same, the reader changes. Think about it for a second. When you pick up and read a classic novel written 200 years ago, you are absolutely not receiving the exact meaning the author intended back then. Our culture, our language, our morality, our entire understanding of how the world works, they all evolve. Every single generation reads the classics differently, because authors naturally write for the people living in their own time. Every single book ever written is, effectively, an accidental message to the future.
So let's return to the Voynich Manuscript one last time. Imagine the day we finally break the code. We translate the strange script. What if we discover nothing magical, nothing dangerous, or forbidden, or universe-shattering? What if the darkest, but also the most beautiful possibility is that this unreadable manuscript is simply the hopes, the fears, the loves, and the daily observations of an ordinary human being? Just someone who lived hundreds of years ago, trying to understand nature, recording their life, hoping that someone, someday, would remember them. They were just trying to speak across time.
Perhaps the greatest mystery isn't actually what the book says, but whether it will ever find the right reader. The author of the Voynich Manuscripts could never have imagined modern researchers, digital internet archives, or the fact that their life's work is the subject of this very explainer. Yet here we are, centuries later, still looking at their pages, still asking questions. A book can absolutely outlive its author, its culture, and its original readers. So, maybe these mysterious texts aren't unreadable at all.
Maybe they are just waiting. Somewhere out there, in the dark archives of history, a story is written, and its true reader simply hasn't arrived yet. The only question left is, could that reader be you?